Hello and welcome to this program titled Workplace Conflict Resolution Tips. My name is Michael Dennis. I'll be the presenter. Let's jump in with an introduction. In my opinion, conflict in the workplace is inevitable, and unfortunately, conflicts can affect morale and damage organizational effectiveness. More specifically, unresolved conflicts in the workplace result in lower productivity, higher costs, lower customer satisfaction levels, and higher levels of employee turnover. The goal of this program is to provide ideas and tips and techniques to reduce conflict and its harmful effects. It's not your imagination or your fault. Most people receive no training about how to effectively manage workplace-related conflict. In today's presentation, we're going to talk about tools and techniques that you can implement immediately to more effectively manage conflict in your workplace. Let's review some of the more common sources of workplace conflict. They include poor communication, miscommunication, and misunderstanding. Workplace conflict can result from inadequate training or inadequate resources, as well as bullying, discrimination, or harassment. Workplace conflict can result from high levels of workload. It can result from unfair treatment and discrimination. Workplace conflict can result from unclear or unrealistic goals and expectations. Workplace conflict can result from stress, personality disputes, and poor management skills. How to de-escalate a conflict in the workplace. Number 1, choose a good time to meet and remember to discuss disagreements in private. Why? Because discussing disagreements in public tends to entrench each person in their original position. Do your best to remain calm and recognize that the only emotions that you can control in a workplace-related conflict are yours. If you are a manager, you'll want to address issues that occur between your subordinate coworkers proactively. In other words, you want to address issues before they become problems, and you want to address problems before they become a crisis. In any workplace-related conflict, there's going to have to be a point where there's a discussion. In that discussion, you'll want to listen carefully to what the other party has to say. And in connection with that discussion, it's important to apologize for anything that you did to either cause or create the problem, or to escalate rather than to de-escalate the conflict. How to resolve conflicts between coworkers. As a supervisor, you're going to become aware of conflicts between subordinates who happen to be coworkers. If you're intent on addressing and resolving that type of conflict, you should remember that workplace disagreements are commonplace. However, conflicts and arguments and ill will between coworkers are uncommon and they are disruptive. Please recognize that conflicts between subordinate coworkers tend to fester and worsen when you, as the supervisor, ignore them. With this in mind, you'll need to schedule face-to-face discussions with the parties that are having the conflict, and you'll want to establish ground rules for that meeting. Notwithstanding the fact that there are ground rules, if things get heated, you as the supervisor will need to call a timeout. In that face-to-face discussion, in which you and the two coworkers are present, it's important not to mandate a solution. Your job in that meeting is to offer guidance, not solutions. Remember to be patient and listen to get all the facts. To make sure that you have all the facts, try to restate what you've heard to confirm your understanding is correct. As the supervisor, you'll want to encourage constructive conversation in order to find a solution or compromise through discussion and collaboration. Once your subordinates have agreed on a solution or a compromise, what you need to do is create a plan for implementing that solution along with agreeing on the timeline. An important task for the manager to perform is to remind subordinates that they must continue to work with each other when this particular issue has been resolved. And with that in mind, the manager needs to follow up to make sure that the problem has in fact been addressed or is being addressed in whatever manner the parties agreed to during the meeting. Whenever there is a conflict between a supervisor and a subordinate, the employee and the manager need to meet privately. Whatever the problem or the issue is between the supervisor and the subordinate, it should be addressed head-on in that meeting. Supervisors tend to rush these discussions, and that is a problem. They need to be good listeners and they need to be patient. The goal of that meeting is to resolve the dispute quickly and appropriately. Whatever the disagreement is between the supervisor and the subordinate, ideally, that disagreement, that conflict can be resolved during the meeting and a healthy working relationship will exist. But workplaces are not democracies, and the supervisor is not obligated to make sure that the subordinate is happy with the outcome of the discussion. But to be fair, if the manager and their subordinate are unable to resolve the dispute, the matter, the issue, the problem, the dispute should be referred either to senior management or to the human resources department. Additional conflict resolution suggestions. Speak up. Don't expect the other party to read your mind. Also, don't stockpile resentments. When you're describing your perspective on a particular conflict or disagreement, try to use the we approach. For example, we have a problem rather than I have a problem with you. When you meet to discuss your disagreement or conflict with the other party, it is inappropriate to bring allies to that discussion. Make sure that you, as a manager, and your company as an organization have a zero-tolerance policy as it relates to violence or threats of violence in the workplace. Conflicts in the workplace are inevitable, but that does not mean that you must permit disruptive behavior between and among your subordinates. When everything has been said and done, it's important not to hold grudges. If you're in the process of attempting to address and resolve a conflict and you propose a solution which is rejected by the other party, ask them to make a counterproposal. If you're a supervisor or a manager, you'll want to have an open door policy. Why? Because conflicts are less likely to be reported to you if you as a supervisor, as a manager, appear to be unapproachable. Conflict resolution suggestions continued. Workplace dispute resolution should be fast, fair, confidential, and if appropriate, transparent. A key to conflict resolution is open and honest communication. With that in mind, let people tell their story without interruption. Attack the problem, don't attack the person. In the workplace, ignoring a conflict is never going to be a good option. In the workplace, try to keep in mind the big picture, even when you're dealing with the minutiae of a conflict. As a supervisor, you simply cannot afford to ignore problematic employees or problematic behavior. In most conflicts in the workplace, the problem at the root of the conflict is not always obvious. You can reduce the negative impact of workplace-related conflict by having written policies about behavior that is considered to be unacceptable at your workplace. Recognize that professional disagreements can be a source of improvement in your processes, in your policies, and in your procedures. Thank you for your time and attention. I hope you found this program to be interesting and helpful. If you're interested in hearing more information about conflict resolution techniques, here's how you can order a 1-hour program on this topic.